Greetings, citizens. Hey you beautiful creepy human being you. Welcome to my channel and welcome to today's Morbid makeup video. I'm so happy we could meet like this. I'm so happy that somehow in all of this, today, you and I were able to find each other on this crazy little planet that we call home. My name is Brittany or Bratterstein, whichever you prefer, and today we're going to be discussing the extremely controversial death of Christian Andreacchio. But before we get started, if you have not yet had the pleasure, please make sure to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing that bell. I put out a new video every single week, and I would love to hang out with you. Yes, you, specifically you, but I can only do that if you join the Brat Pack and become one of us. One of us. One of us. One of us. And you can also follow me on Instagram and Twitter if you want. They're both Bratterstein, but no pressure. So today's video is in collaboration with Dossier. Do you remember Dossier? I know it's been a while because, I was gone on maternity leave, but now we're back, baby. With the baby. And I'm going to refresh your memory on who Dossier is. Dossier is a fragrance company that creates luxury scents, but at a fraction of luxury prices. Where most perfumes, high-end perfumes that is, can cost anywhere from $50 to hundreds of dollars. Dossier's perfumes range anywhere from $29 to $49, and they offer bulk deals with up to 25% off. And they offer bulk deals with up to 25% off and also free shipping when you buy 3 or more bottles, which is a deal that honestly sounds too good to be true to me, but I promise you it is true. Isn't that crazy? This is real life. So I have 2 scents to share with you today. The first one I have here is Floral Lavender, and this one is inspired by YSL's perfume Libre. And listen, I already smelled these, so I already know what I'm gonna say, but this smells so good. It's like, fresh and floral, but not like mature floral, like youthful, but not too youthful either. It's like my age floral. It's just a really nice, fresh, easy floral scent that's perfect for the season that we're currently in, which is actually why I chose it. So that's Floral Lavender. And the other one I got is Floral Berries. And listen, I don't want to pick favorites, but I'm going to pick favorites. So Floral Berries is inspired by Jo Malone's Peony and Blush Suede. And it just smells, I'm going to wear this one. It just smells so freaking good. This is actually one that you may recall, or you may not. I don't know how much you pay attention to me. This is one that I've actually already purchased before, but I liked it so much that I got it again. Floral Berries. The scent's so nice, they named it twice. They didn't name it twice. It's named Floral Berries, but you know what I mean. The scent's so nice, I got it twice. Anyways, I said it before and I'll say it again. The best part of Dossier for me is that they are a cruelty-free fragrance company, and most high-end perfume companies just aren't. YSL, not cruelty-free. Jo Malone, not cruelty-free. So if you wanted to try these scents, if you smelled them, you're like, damn, that smells good. Like if you're at a beauty retail store and you smell these 2 perfumes by YSL or Jo Malone and you smell them, you're like, this smells amazing, but you love animals and you don't want to see them tested on. Dossier is cruelty-free. And another big selling point, which is probably the biggest one for most people, is that they are a fraction of the price of those perfumes. So with all of that said, Dossier is offering members of the Brat Pack 10% off with the code BRATTERSTEIN at checkout for a limited time. Now, I can't imagine that you're going to find a better deal than that because they're already so affordable. You can get bulk deals, and now with the code BRATTERSTEIN, you can get 10% off. So I would say to take advantage, use the link down in my description box. Use the code BRATTERSTEIN, that's me, at checkout to get 10% off your new favorite perfume today. And I want to end this little ad by saying a big thank you to Dossier for wanting to continue to work with me. It's been about a year now that we've been working together, and that's pretty cool. And of course, I want to thank you guys for always being so supportive and cool about all my sponsors, because you guys rock. Don't ever change. All right, now that I'm done spreading the good word of Dossier, we can go ahead and get into this video. Now, this is a video on a case that was suggested to me by a member of the Brat Pack. It was suggested by a member named Ash and Emmy. Hi, Ash and Emmy. Thank you, Ash and Emmy. I saw your comments. I saw all your comments. Ash and Emmy, very persistent. I like that. It's a quality that I'm a big fan of. And I had put it on my list. It was already on my list before you suggested it, but it was just a matter of taking a chunk of time to research because, woo, this case is a doozy. But really, guys, just for a side note, this is how you get me to cover a case you want me to cover, just because I get a lot of comments. So if you leave one comment with the case, I'll screen cap it and I add it to the list, but then my list is kind of long, so it's kind of like out of sight, out of mind. But if you leave it over and over, it's in sight, in mind, and it's just in my face, so it reminds me to look into it. But anyway, this is a case that has been on my list for so long because it's the type of case that I don't generally cover. I don't like to do, not that I don't like to, I'm apprehensive about doing unsolved or controversial cases, though I do them occasionally. It's just the kind of case that usually takes me more mental time to prepare to actually film, and more importantly deal with the comment section after the fact, because with really controversial cases, people have very strong feelings. And in this particular case, people have very strong feelings, and it's for a good reason. This case has a lot of sketch to it, you know what I mean? Like, it was handled very poorly by police. Yeah, sketchy is just the best word that I can use to describe it, because the crime scene was just handled really poorly. The evidence at the scene doesn't really seem to line up with the conclusion the police came to. The stories that the people who were present at the time that Christian died seem really off, and just, you know, these things that we're going to discuss today have just led a lot of people to believe that Christian did not die by suicide, which is what the police did end up determining to be the case, and that he was instead murdered. Now, while I tell you this story about what happened to Christian, I want you to consider all you hear and then answer me this question, the question of the day, and that is, what do you think happened to Christian? Do you think he was murdered, or alternatively, do you think he killed himself? I am very curious to see where you all land on this. So, I'm going to tell you the whole story. And while I do, I'm going to be putting on a full face of makeup, hence the makeup in Morbid makeup. Now, if that's not really your thing, that's fine. Thanks for hanging out this long. I hope you find a video on this case that you prefer, like in a format you prefer. But if you're on the fence, you're not sure how you feel, maybe stick around. I think you could be surprised by how much you like me. Okay? Okay. Oh, and if you're ever curious what makeup I'm using, it's all listed down in the description box. I always forget to mention that, but I always list everything, including this compact that everyone asks me about in almost every video. It's linked down below for your convenience. Now, come, gather around, and let me tell you the story of the very controversial death of Christian Andreacchio. Now, I want to start this video off with a quote from Christian's mother. This is just a snippet that describes the actual hell she has been in since losing her son. She said, and I quote, "When a parent loses a child, their world stops. It's the closest thing to experiencing your own death while still living and breathing." Christian Shane Andreacchio was born November 4th, 1992. So the same day as me, we share a birthday, but he was just born 4 years later. And he was born to parents Todd and Ray. And he was one of 3 children born into the family, with a brother named Josh and a sister named Alexa. Christian was super magnetic and super happy, with a smile and an energy that just drew people to him. Whereas brother Josh was more reserved and more calm, and to himself, Christian was the opposite. He was the life of a party. He was always talking, always making his presence known, always making people laugh. He was an impulsive kid in the best way, and he and his brother were very close. Growing up together, relatively close in age, they were best friends, and his sister was completely obsessed with him as well. I believe he was older. Yeah, he was older than her, and she just loved her big brother. She always wanted to be around him and do whatever it was that he was doing. Apparently, when they were younger, his sister wanted to be around him so much that he was outside, like, on his dirt bike, riding his dirt bike, and he put his little sister in a big dog kennel and attached it to the back of the dirt bike, and then rode around the yard with it. And I guess at the time that this was actually happening, his mom didn't know about it. They learned about it after the fact, because I'm sure she would have probably not let him do that, because that sounds terrifying, but it also sounds fun at the same time. And it just shows that she really wanted to hang out with her brother, to the point that she allowed herself to be put into a dog kennel and driven around the yard with a dirt bike. On top of being like a fun and likable guy, he was also a nice guy, a good person. Christian's family found out after he was already gone. Like, they didn't know about this when he was alive, but after he was gone, they found out that Christian had actually made friends with like an elderly man who lived in their neighborhood. And he would go by, like, I think once a week, he would go by to visit this guy and ask him if he needed any help. If he needed help with anything, if he needed to go anywhere, needed Christian to pick him up something. Like, he was the type of person who would just stop in and help this elderly man for no reason, just because he cared. He was the type of person who just cared about other people and put people before himself. And for his young age, that's very impressive to me. He just loved people, man. He was the type of person who loved people, and he was the type of person, and this is something that I personally related to, but he was the type of person that wouldn't move out of town, like the town that he lived in. He wouldn't move out of town while his grandparents were still alive. And 100% I get that, because I really want to move out of state, like really, really bad, but I'm not going to do it while my Gammy's alive, because like I want to be able to see her all the time, and I wouldn't be able to if I left the state. So that was something that just kind of resonated with me and just showed like the type of person that he is, which was a good one. And so it's really, really sad what ended up happening to him. In addition to loving people, Christian was also very loved. After his death, his parents took this street sign that he had had, and all of his friends signed it with different colored markers, leaving him messages about just how much they did love him, how much they missed him, what he meant to them. And at his funeral, a bunch of his friends even shared eulogies. And in addition to having and being loved by so many friends, being described as a guy who never met a stranger, Christian was the type of teenager that was actually close to his family. Christian came from a large, close family, and not just the immediate family either, but also his cousins, his aunts, his uncles. Everyone was close. Christian loved motorcycles and dirt bikes. He got a dirt bike for his 16th birthday because he loved them so much, and he loved jet skis and being out on the water. We'll get into how much he loved being on the water because it's part of the story. But he would like be the type of kid who would wake up early, which already a teenager waking up early, unheard of. But he would wake up early before anyone in his house, before even his mom was up. And you know, moms do be getting up, and he'd already be out on the water starting his day. And speaking of Christian's mom, this is going to be like the most obvious statement ever, but she loved him, dude. Like, she loved him so much. And when he was a little baby, she would sing him, "You are my sunshine." And as Christian got older, him and his mom were buddies. They would often go to the movies or to concerts together. And when Christian was home, if his mom called him and told him a new movie was out, he'd always be down to just get up and go see it with her, no matter what time it was, what day it was. He would usually cancel plans to be with his mom. And that was the same as with concerts. The two had seen Kid Rock, Linkin Park, and Eminem together. And the last conversation they actually had together was about getting tickets to Rihanna, to go see Rihanna together. But they never got to finalize these plans because Christian died. Christian was a super hardworking guy, especially for his young age. I'm going to keep saying especially for his young age because he was only 21 when he died. And it's crazy for me for a 21-year-old to have the work ethic that he had. I mean, he did start going to work with his dad at the age of 9, so it was kind of instilled in him. But by the young, ripe age of barely being legal, Christian already had a job on a tugboat where he would go up and down the Mississippi River, and he would go out for like months at a time. And he would have like these intense shifts of 6 hours on, 6 hours off, 6 hours on, 6 hours off. That's crazy to me. Like, I know working 6 hours isn't like a long shift, but then only getting 6 hours off, so you have to do everything you need to do in that time, like sleep, eat, breathe, socialize, have like a decompressing moment. He did that as a teenager, like young adult. And man, I didn't even know this was the type of job you could have. Like going out on a tugboat? Or was it a towboat? I'm pretty sure it was a tugboat. Like, that's freaking crazy. Like, I guess it makes sense that that sort of job exists, right? But it's just so far removed from what I do on my day-to-day. But man, just the idea that he would go out on the water for a month at a time, and that was just the life he lived and the job he had, is absolutely wild to me. Bobbing out in the ocean like a tiny little cauliflower. Like, what? Anyways, Christian was super good at this job. And that's probably because he actually liked it. Because remember, I said he loved being on the water. This is the kind of job he always wanted. And I find just in general, people do jobs they enjoy better. Like, that's just something that I've seen throughout my life. Like, just as like a rule of life, that if you're happy in your job, you're going to do a better job. If you're a business manager or something, if your employees are happy, they're going to do a better job. This is just something that I've seen in my life, that the statement doesn't matter at all. The statement doesn't matter at all. Not even a little bit. But Christian, great at his job. And he was so good that he moved through the ranks quickly, like at this job. And by the time he was 21, by the time he died, he was already the boss of like a bunch of people. And most of the people he like ruled over were older than he was. This job just meant a lot to Christian, and Christian meant a lot to the people he worked with, to the point that after Christian died, his boss sent his parents a merchant marine flag, which his parents had framed and put down in the basement sort of bedroom / garage apartment that Christian had stayed in when he lived with them. So as I said, Christian had gotten a lot of promotions at this job, and because of the promotions he got, Christian was making bank. Okay, especially for his young age. Take a shot every time I say that. Don't, you will get sick. But he was doing so well that homeboy had a BMW. Okay? Like, he had the dollar bills. And his goal throughout his life working in this field was to become a boat captain. And he was well on his way to do it. Like, he was doing really well. And I know this seems random, like mentioning that he had money, but I think it plays into the story. Okay, so we're gonna get there. If you don't know the story, you will know, and if you do know the story, you know why I'm mentioning the things that I'm mentioning. Yeah. So all of this that I've said kind of illustrates that, he was doing financially well, but it also shows that things were going pretty well in life for him. You know what I mean? Like, he kind of had it all going on, kind of had everything he wanted. And when it rained, it poured, I guess you could say, because in addition to doing well in his career, he was doing pretty okay in the love department as well. Anyway, he had landed himself a new girlfriend, which I can only imagine is a difficult thing to do when you're away at sea for a month at a time. But he had recently done that. He had a new girlfriend, and prior to this girlfriend, he had another girlfriend. He had had a girlfriend in high school, and the two had been together for years. Okay, so right before he got this new girlfriend, he had had a pretty sizable breakup, because the girl who he had been with for years, her name was Avery, they had sort of started to grow apart. Sadly, this was a big heartbreak for him, because they were together such a long time, and this was his first, big girlfriend. And they had just sort of started to grow apart over the years, and I'm sure his job being away for a month at a time didn't really help with that. So Christian and Avery, his ex-girlfriend, they had been together before they broke up for 5 years, so all through high school. And Christian really loved her. Her family said that Christian was a really, quote, upstanding young man, and if he had been any less, Avery would not have been allowed to go out with him. But her parents knew that they were friends first, that he respected her and would, in their words, die for her. The two were inseparable while they were together, going to each other's homes on holidays and going on family vacations together. She was quoted as being the yin to his yang. But they ended up breaking up just because he was working all the time. He was gone for a month at a time. And when he was home, Avery, who had just started college, was busy. She was busy with schoolwork and trying to get her future together. And it just didn't make sense for them to stay together, so they separated. But everyone kind of expected that they would get back together when the timing was right. But in the time that they were separated, Christian got this new girlfriend. This new girlfriend's name was Whitley. Whitley was 17 and Christian was 21. And though they were only a couple years apart in actual age, they were pretty far apart in maturity, but more so in how established and adulty the lives they were living were. Let me explain. So Christian had a job, was self-sufficient, took care of himself, had been taking care of himself for years. Well, Whitley, not so much. Didn't really have a job, didn't really take care of herself at all. Which, let's be fair here, she is only 17 years old. she was just a bit younger minded because she was a bit younger. When Christian's family met her, initially they liked her. They thought she was cute, that she was, you know, a nice girl, that she was a little young for Christian, but overall they didn't really have any complaints with her when they first met her. But after Christian and Whitley had been together a little while, they started to hear some not so great things about Whitley and also started to see some red flags of their own. For example, one that stuck out and is said a lot in this case, it's very strange, is that Whitley had been like at his family's house and had taken a picture of Christian and Avery, his ex, that like was in their home, took it like to Christian's mom, stabbed a bunch of holes in the picture and was like, "This is what I think about that." And his family was just like who the fuck does that? Who gave you the right, first off? And that's just like a super weird thing to do. I don't know the context. That's the problem, is you hear about this and you don't know the context, like why she would do that, why she would feel comfortable doing it if she just had like no sense of self and no sense of like her surroundings whatsoever and just thought that was appropriate, or if there was like a conversation that was happening that led up to it. But it just seems very, very strange. And I can see why his family would be like, "Bitch seems a little bit unhinged, don't you think?" You know? Because it's just kind of an unhinged thing to do. Truly. And in another instance, there were some weird things that went on between Whitley and Christian's little sister, because it seemed that like Whitley maybe was a bit jealous of the closeness that Christian and his little sister had shared, and it was just weird. She gave the family like bad overall vibes, is the point. And it wasn't long before his family kicked her out of their house, because I don't know if I mentioned that they had actually like let Whitley move in at one point, because I guess she was kind of bouncing around from like home to home, like she didn't have like a stable environment, so they had let her move in. And it didn't take long before they were like, "Okay, this girl needs to go because there's just too much. She's a lot, and we just don't have the time or energy or want to deal with all that she's bringing to the table." You know what I mean? But anyway, it wasn't long after Whitley was kicked out of his parents' house that Christian decided he was going to move out as well. And this kind of surprised his mom, because Christian had like a pretty sweet gig in the house that he lived in. He had basically the entire basement to himself that was pretty much an apartment, not even a bedroom. And it had a door that led out to his like favorite place in the world, which was the lake. So she was surprised that he made this choice to leave, but he did. He left and he ended up getting an apartment with his brother. And as I said, Christian and his brother were super, super close throughout their entire life. Even as kids in all the family photos, they had their arms around each other. They were very close. They worked together. They lived together now. And they were more than just brothers. They were also friends. So, when Christian got his new place initially, when Christian got his new place, Whitley was not supposed to live there. Like, they weren't moving in together. He was just moving in with his brother. But quickly, things kind of ended up going that way. Initially, what it was supposed to be is that Whitley was just going to hang out there while Christian was home. Because remember, he was gone for like a month at a time. So when he would be home, she would be there. They'd hang out. He'd leave. She'd go do her own thing. But quickly it became like Whitley just always being there, whether Christian was home or not. She pretty much moved in, and she was also constantly using Christian's stuff, like his car, because she didn't have one of her own. People in Christian's life noticed that he changed a lot while he was dating Whitley. Before, when he'd get home from a trip out at sea, as soon as he'd got back, he'd want to do as much as possible, like socially, with as many people as possible. He'd be up all hours of the night and day trying to fit in as many hours with friends and family as possible. But once he and Whitley got together, that sort of changed. He started to sort of isolate himself, and he just spent all his time when he was back home, at home with Whitley, locked up in the apartment and playing video games. Which I don't personally think is that weird, because truly, if somebody was to just try to describe me before meeting my husband, they would describe me as exactly the same. I was like a party animal. I was always the one that was down to do whatever. Like, you want to pick me up at 2 a.m. and go drive to LA, because I didn't live in LA at the time. Let's fucking go. But once I met my husband, once I met the love of my life, we slowed down. You know what I mean? What is that? That's not what should be happening. I slowed down. I started staying in, and now me and my husband are major homebodies. It's just more fun for me personally to stay in the house with my best friend than to go out into the world and get into mischief. I'm not saying that's the situation with Christian and Whitley, just because from what I've read, and what we're going to get into, it doesn't seem like they had that type of relationship. It's just my way of saying that that note didn't seem immediately odd to me, like that he started to stay in, because sometimes that's just what you do when you have a relationship. You just do be hanging out with the person you're dating. Christian and Whitley were reportedly good for a while, but it didn't last, and by February of 2014, which is when Christian died, they were not good at all. They were fighting constantly, and I guess it even got as bad as Christian had Whitley put a tracking device on her cell phone, which sounds like a lot, I know, but apparently, allegedly, she had been unfaithful, and this was the way they were handling that trust issue after the trust had been broken. And in addition to that, Christian was having Whitley take drug tests when he was away at sea, because apparently Whitley was like getting into some stuff that was a little bit heavier than the green. And he wanted to know if that was what was happening, because that was kind of a condition. Like, he didn't want to be supporting, right? Paying rent, paying for gas, letting this person use his car if she was just like fucking around, cheating on him, and going out and doing drugs whenever he wasn't home. And trust me, I know someone's gonna say like, oh, that's fucked up, like Christian is clearly possessive, etc. I understand, but like, it doesn't really play into the story and like what happened to him, and he's not here to defend himself. And who knows what you would do if you were in a position where like the person you were with was unfaithful to you while you were completely supporting them. Everyone deals with everything differently, so let's not like shame a dead man, because that's in poor taste and a weird thing to do. I just think that's so gross when people do things like that, but that's just me. My whole point is to just say that like things weren't going good at this point, but it wasn't one of those things where it was immediately bad, right? Like these types of relationships, like why didn't they just break up sooner? Why did it get to this point? Things like this happen gradually, you know what I mean? Like the relationship has the honeymoon phase, and then people will start to show who they really are. And anyway, I know I like compared their relationship to mine and my husband's before, but it's safe to say it wasn't much like mine and my husband's. I mean, it was in one way. They were described as like obsessed with each other, and that they had fallen for each other super hard, super fast, and just got very like all encompassed with each other, which is me and my husband. But they were also described as jealous and possessive and obsessive in a negative way, and despite all that, they were still like unfaithful to each other. So nothing like me and my husband. Anyways, Christian got to a breaking point in the relationship in February of 2014, which is when he died, and basically he decided he was going to break things off with Whitley. He kind of took her aside and was like, yo, I'm about to leave. He was about to go on a month-long trip for work. He's like, I'm about to leave, so I'm going to need you to be leaving as well. I'm going to need you to leave my apartment. Don't be here when I get back, and also you can no longer use my car. And I'm sure this information just absolutely thrilled her. Thrill me, chill me, fulfill me, said Whitley. She didn't say that. I said that. Anyway, so Christian leaves on his trip, and at the same time his brother, because remember his brother and him live together, is also out of the house at work. So the apartment, totally empty. Christian is only at work, like, I think it was just one day, maybe 2 days, when he starts getting calls and texts from a friend of his named Dylan. This is a friend that hung out with him and Whitley often. And Dylan calls Christian and is like, yo, not only is Whitley in your apartment and using your car, which you told her not to do, but she is driving around town in your car with another dude, which is not cool. So Christian is like, what the fuck? Like, he realizes he needs to get home and he needs to get things sorted. Like, he needs to get home and kick this crazy woman out of his apartment and out of his car and out of his life. But like, logistically, how is this going to work? Because you are, sir, on a boat out at sea. Like, not only do they need to find somebody to cover your shift because like you're working, but you need to find a way to get back to land and like get back home. What are they going to do? Drive you? They didn't. They just dropped him off at like the closest dock. But still, I was like, how would one go about handling said situation. That seems incredibly stressful. So to get out of work, because remember, he's literally at work when this is happening. He told his boss he faked a family emergency, like with his parents, in order to get off the boat without getting in trouble, and like having to explain that he had like a crazy ex-girlfriend that he needed to go kick out of his place. So he tells his boss that he has a family emergency. He tells his boss that he's going to be back, like he's planning on coming back to work. Okay, and then he gets dropped off at a dock in Louisiana, where he gets picked up by this friend Dylan, who had been calling him over and over, and the two of them drive back to Mississippi. On February 26, 2014, at about 4:30 p.m., Dylan, the same friend who had been calling Christian while he was on the boat to let him know that Whitley was in his apartment, was in his car, was driving around with other dudes, well, now he was making another phone call, and that was calling to report that Christian was dead. Dylan called and told 911 that Christian had killed himself by shooting himself in the head. So police come to the apartment, and this is when they find Christian dead in his bathroom. He was sort of slumped over the bathtub, so like the top half of his body was leaning into the bathtub, like he was facing forward, and there was blood pooling in the tub. His lower body was out of the tub with his like calves pointed up towards the ceiling. Christian had been shot in the right side of his head. It had exited the left side, and the bullet was found in the bathtub, with the gun being pressed like between Christian's body and the bathtub, like wedged there on his left side. The scene looked weird right off the bat because it just didn't seem to line up. For example, first off, the position of Christian's body with relation to where the bullet ended up and where the gun ended up didn't make sense. Like for one thing, Christian, right-handed, bullet hole, right side of his head. Yet the gun is found pinned on the left side of his body against the bathtub. Like, how would that happen with Christian being right-handed? This is the right hand, being right-handed and shooting himself in the right side of the head. How would the gun then end up on his left side pinned against the bathtub? That already, like that right there, makes no sense. And two, and this is something that people have talked about a lot. I don't know a ton about guns, but the gun that was found pinned under Christian's left side was also found uncocked. And apparently with this type of gun, that would have to be done manually. But it couldn't have been done manually by Christian because Christian was dead. Because he had killed himself, presumably. So that's weird. Like, how would he do that? And three. So Whitley and Dylan, who were the two that were at the home when Christian died, said that it all happened super fast. Like, Christian just killed himself. Like, bang, oh no, call 911. But when police arrived, Christian's body was already in rigor, and the blood at the scene had already started to dry and had gotten thick with 3 C's. So, those things take time. I think they take hours. So how does it make sense that this just happened if it happened long enough ago that he is in rigor and the blood is thick? Weird, right? But despite all of this weirdness, the police almost immediately determined that it was a suicide by self-inflicted gunshot wound and washed their hands of any sort of investigating in this case. Now, it's not to say they didn't do anything, because despite determining that this was a suicide right away, they did at least bring Dylan and Whitley in for questioning, which, like, good, right? They brought him in and they asked him about what happened. And when Whitley was questioned, she said that she had been sleeping on the couch when whatever happened to Christian happened. That she had woken up when Dylan came into the apartment, like Dylan had left. Dylan came back to the apartment and went up to the bathroom to like use the bathroom and found Christian dead. And that she had somehow slept through the sound of the gunshot. So in Whitley's version of the story, nobody was present when Christian actually shot himself. It is worth mentioning that Whitley's story does change a couple of times depending on who she's telling it to. She does say, like, later that she's the one that found Christian, that she heard a shot and ran up and found him, and she told somebody else that Dylan found him and he ran down and told her. But either way, let's move on to what Dylan says happened. So Dylan says that he picked Christian up from Louisiana and that the two drove back to the apartment, arriving just around noon. And that when they got inside, Christian and Whitley started talking and that the fight got heated. That they were fighting about where Whitley had been and with who and what she had been doing. And during this fight, Whitley admitted that she had spent the night with the guy that she had been seen driving around Christian's car with, which is like... Eugh. Apparently, after this, the fight escalated to the point that Christian pulled out his gun, held it to his own head, and started asking Whitley over and over if she loved him. So the fight, real serious, real scary. Somehow, the fight was de-escalated. It doesn't get explained exactly how it went from a gun to the head, do you love me, to being chill, but it did. Dylan got the gun from Christian, hid the gun in the apartment where Christian wouldn't know where it was, and then the trio decided to just hang out and watch a movie. That's what Dylan says. Dylan says that during the evening after this fight, he did leave the apartment a couple of times, that on one occasion he went and picked up food, which is like exactly what you would do after there was a fight so bad that like a gun was drawn. Like that seems like a reasonable thing to do. Because, you know, we're just a couple of cool guys here. Everything's cool. We're all just hanging out. But this is what he says he did. He says that he went and got food and that Christian actually gave him his card to go pick up the food. I don't know, man. This part of the story is already super weird to me because it just seems like the strangest thing to do given what had just happened. Like you just saw a couple fight so aggressively that a gun got pulled that you had to hide. But you're now like... Hey guys, I'm thinking I'm gonna go pick up some Chick-fil-A. Would you guys like anything? And Christian, who was just so mad, is like, yeah, dude, here's my debit card. Go get everyone dinner. I don't know. That seems odd. I guess it could happen, obviously, but it just seems super strange to me. If that doesn't seem weird to you, that's okay. Let me raise you one. Dylan says that on this day, Christian also asked him, hey, while you're out doing your various errands, could you do an errand for me as well? Dylan's like, yeah, dude, absolutely. What do you want me to do? And Christian's like, can you please go to my bank and try to withdraw all of my money while you're out? That would be great if you could please do that. And Dylan was like, absolutely. I would absolutely love to go pull out all of your money for you. So Dylan is actually seen on camera an hour after he supposedly arrived at the apartment with Christian, trying to withdraw money from Christian's account. He was unsuccessful in doing this, but he tried. And this happened an hour after they arrived at the apartment. So let's recap real quick. In this hour, they arrived at the apartment. Christian and Whitley fought. The gun was pulled. It was de-escalated. The gun was hid. They watched a movie. And then Dylan left, drove to the bank. So the time it takes to get to the bank, gets there and tries to pull out the money. I know that time's not linear, but that doesn't make any fucking sense to me. I don't know. It just doesn't seem to add up in my brain. Maybe you know something I don't know. Can you think of how that would work? Now, I did think of a scenario that could explain why he was so wrong on the timeline. Obviously, this is just like my thought process and nothing has said that this is what it was, but I wonder if perhaps Dylan may have been on drugs and that's why he was so confused about when things happened, because we do know that Whitley was doing drugs, right? Like Christian was having her drug tested, and sometimes, I'm not saying always, but sometimes birds of a feather flock together and friends are friends, like people who do drugs are friends with other people who do drugs. So it's possible that maybe that could explain it. And I didn't see anything, speaking of like people who hang out with each other, I didn't see anything saying that Christian did drugs, so I just want to make that clear. I didn't see anything that said that at all, but I thought about that when it came to Dylan, because I cannot think of another reason where he would, unless he was lying, where he would get the timeline just so impossibly wrong. So anyways, Dylan goes back to the apartment with Whitley and Christian, and then okay, he says, and that Dylan says that at this point, he retrieves the gun from where he had hid it, gives it back to Christian and is like, here you go, bro. Now that you're super calm, here's your gun back. Can you please make sure to put this away in a very secure place? Because I think now you're calm enough to have it. And now that I've given you back this gun, I'm going to leave again. I'm going to go to Best Buy and I'm going to look at some speakers. This is just so dumb and makes no sense to me, dude. Like, I don't understand that thought process. If this is the truth, I don't understand the thought process of deciding to give the gun back right before leaving the house again. It just doesn't make sense. Like, why not just leave it hid? Like, why would you give it back? It doesn't make any sense. Like, I know you were just so angry, but here's the gun. Please make sure to unload it and put it away. Don't use it, but thank you so much. I don't understand. It's not criminal to give him the gun back, but it's stupid. If that's what happened, it's just so dumb and I don't understand. So anyway, Dylan says he goes. He does his Best Buy trip. He comes back, and when he comes back, he finds that Whitley is sleeping and Christian is in the bathroom. He says that he goes to the bathroom door to see if Christian's okay. He goes to the bathroom door to see if Christian's okay. He's getting no response when he calls out to Christian. So he goes down, he tries to wake up Whitley to have Whitley help him, but that chick is in a very deep sleep, so she doesn't get up. So he goes back up. He keeps calling out to Christian. He sees light under the door, so he thinks Christian's taking a shower, he says, but he's not sure, which to me, I'm like, wouldn't you hear the water running? Like, wouldn't that be a dead giveaway if the shower was happening? Like, I don't know about you, but if I'm standing outside of a bathroom door and someone's taking a shower, I can hear that. But he says he wasn't sure if he was taking a shower, but he thought he might be. Anyways, he says that when he couldn't get a response from Christian, he then just said, fuck it, and busted in through the door. And that's when he found Christian lying in the bathtub, like leaning over the tub the way he was found, bleeding and non-responsive. So he says at this point he just screamed out, and at that point Whitley was miraculously awakened. Well, that sounds very judgy. I don't mean for it to sound judgy because we don't know what happened here. But she was awakened at this point to the sound of Dylan screaming. She ran upstairs to also see Christian dead in the tub, and she scooped him up and started to hold him while Dylan called the police. And I just have to say this one thing, because it's a bit of information that I came upon when looking into this case that I can't get out of my head now that I've learned it. I need to poison your brain as well. I heard through the grapevine, I don't know what that means, but that once Whitley came upon Christian's dead body, she reached into his pocket, pulled out his cigarettes, took one, and went out and smoked. And like, I understand that the power of nicotine is strong, but if that's true, that's like very heartless, and I cannot imagine doing something like that. And now that I've heard it, I can't unhear it. So I need you to hear it so you can't unhear it, so we can be in this collective hell together. Anyway, speaking of Whitley, during her interview with police, she also offered up some information, some interesting information. She told police, like, hey, if you are to test my hands for gunshot residue, it's gonna come back positive, because I was out yesterday shooting with some friends. And they were like, that is very interesting. Thank you for telling us. We didn't ask, but thank you for offering that up. And it was just like an odd thing because she just offered it up without, you know, them asking. But I gotta be honest, if I was in her position and I had been out shooting the day before and then my boyfriend did get shot, I would probably offer up that information as well, just because I would be so paranoid that they were gonna think it was me that I would let them know, like, you're gonna find this. But there is it's a gray area on whether or not Whitley ever did shoot a gun the day before while she was out with friends. Anyways, police do end up doing gunshot residue tests on Whitley and Dylan and of course Christian, and all three came back positive for gunshot residue. And here's the thing, here's where I'm curious. Like, Christian having it makes sense in the theory that he killed himself, but what about Whitley and Dylan? Like, okay, let's say Whitley was out shooting the day before. I'm not like a gunshot residue scientist, but would it still be there after 24 hours? Would it not like wipe off, or would, I don't know, washing your hands after going to the bathroom or taking a shower the night before eliminate it? Like, are we to believe that she didn't wash her hands or shower or touch anything the whole day that Christian was killed. Like, that doesn't make any sense. We know that she was taking a nap and all that jazz. And, like, I know that this is 2014, so it's, like, pre-COVID, but, like, I have a hard time believing that she would not have washed her hands and stuff, right? And then Dylan. Don't even get me started on Dylan. I didn't see anything, any report that would explain why he had gunshot residue on him. So I am filled with confusion. But again, I'm not like a gun residue scientist. So if you know more than me on this, please let me know, because I am confused. Let us continue. Another thing that made the duo, Whitley and Dylan, look odd to a lot of people is that when they were being questioned, police asked them for Christian's phone. Like, do you guys have Christian's phone? Please give us Christian's phone. And they kept saying that they didn't have it, they didn't know where it was. But when they were pushed and they were like, well, if you don't give it to us, you're not leaving, Whitley produced the phone. She just had it in her purse the whole time and for whatever reason wouldn't give it to police. Which is odd, and it doesn't make you look good. Like, that's a weird thing to do. Maybe, I'm pretty sure her phone was broken, if I remember correctly, so maybe she just really wanted to have a phone. But like, the cops are asking for it. Your boyfriend was killed, like, give the phone. It looks bad. And when they looked through the phone, they found text messages in there of Whitley and Christian talking about her possibly being pregnant and that the two of them should get married. Like, Whitley was saying, like, we should get married because, like, I'm gonna have a baby. And this is, like, you know, some information to have, especially since, remember, Christian was going to effectively dump Whitley. So I guess it's possible that she was sensing that this was coming. This could have been, like, a last-ditch effort to try to, like, keep him with her. Either because she loved him or because he was literally supporting her financially. I can't say, I'm not her, I don't know. But I think it, you know. And one more thing when it comes to, like, the pregnancy and the two getting married and all that jazz. Well, Christian had a life insurance policy, which is, when you hear that in a story, it always, like, makes people be like, that's something to know. Apparently Christian had this life insurance policy because he had, like, a dangerous job. He was literally on a boat out at sea. I've seen The Perfect Storm, Titanic, Jaws. I know things happen. It's a dangerous place to be. And I guess something dangerous had happened to Christian, not like super recently, but during his job, where he actually fell overboard and he was able to be retrieved and he was safe and everything was cool. All things were good, but it just showed that something could happen. So he got this life insurance policy. So he had this insurance policy in case anything was to ever happen to him. And initially, the people who were listed as his beneficiaries were his mother and his ex-girlfriend, Avery. And when Whitley found out about this, she wasn't happy, as I'm sure you can imagine. So then, oh, I'm pregnant. Oh, we should get married. Oh, you should change the beneficiary of your life insurance policy to me, because if something happens to you, what's going to happen to me and our hypothetical baby? It just looked bad because, you know, Whitley had no car, no job, no money. She was totally supported by Christian. And when you bring life insurance into the situation, it automatically makes it sticky and just makes it look more weird. So anyway, back to the phone. Inside the phone, police also found some text messages that were sent from him to Whitley, where he talked about wanting to end his life. There is speculation, like, people aren't convinced these were sent by Christian because Whitley did have Christian's phone. However, I couldn't find online when these texts were sent and if Christian's phone was with Whitley at that time. But either way, Whitley wasn't very honest or forthcoming about this point about Christian wanting to end his life anyway. When Whitley was asked if Christian had ever talked about hurting himself, taking his life, she said that she didn't know, that she didn't think so. She also failed to mention to police that earlier in the day when they got in their fight, he had held a gun to his head. She just kind of omitted any information that would show that Christian had killed himself, which I think is a little bit telling. Like, if in the scenario that Christian was murdered and that Whitley had something to do with it, I can't see why she wouldn't want to further the narrative that he did kill himself, but that's something we'll get into a little bit later. She did tell police that Christian had expressed to her that he was unhappy and that he couldn't, that he wanted to quit his job, and that he couldn't make everyone in his life happy. Like, if he was making her happy, he was hurting his family. If he was making his family happy, he was hurting her. The police did ask her if she killed Christian, and she said no. They asked her, like, who found him, and she said Dylan. She said that she had been sleeping and that she wasn't present for the shot. But remember, she did later change that story when she was talking to friends. She told friends that she found Christian, that she had heard a shot, and she ran up and she found him. And some people find this strange and find that they believe that she's lying when she says she wasn't there, and that she's telling the truth when she says she's the one that found him, etc, etc. But for me, when I hear that, maybe just because of my experience, because I have had friends that are killed, and I have seen firsthand that some people like to connect themselves closer to a situation than they actually were to get people to feel more sorry for them and to garner attention. And I could see that being the case as well. Her not actually being the one that found him, but her telling people that she was, so people would feel even more bad for her, for not only having her boyfriend die, having her boyfriend kill himself, but being the person to have found him as well. So as I said, Christian's death was ruled a suicide because honestly, what other conclusion could they come to when there's this obvious evidence of him killing himself, right? When Christian's family found out, they were devastated. I guess the day that they found out, they had been out like doing something together as parents when they received a call saying that there had been a tragedy with one of the kids and that they needed to get back home immediately. And I can't even imagine getting that phone call. They weren't given specifics. They weren't told what had happened. They were waiting to get home to find out. And the whole drive home, they were trying to figure out like what it could be, which kid it could be. It couldn't be Christian because Christian was out on the tugboat. They were just going back and forth in their head. They actually thought that it was probably Christian's brother because I guess he had just started a new job and they thought that maybe something had happened to him. But Christian was the farthest from their mind because he had been out on the boat and his mom had just talked to him and everything had been fine. So I can't even imagine that drive home, just waiting to find out that something horrible had happened to your kid. It just sounds like absolute hell. It breaks my heart to even think about. And I guess once they got home, they were informed that it was Christian, and that Christian not only was dead, that he had killed himself. And immediately they were like, oh, well, that just isn't true. Like, it has to be a mistake. There's no way that that's real life, because one, his mother had just talked to Christian, like, and he was totally fine. He was on a boat out at sea. How's he going to kill himself on a boat out at sea? And plus, he had no reason to kill himself. He was a happy guy with literally his dream life, and they knew him, and it just made no sense to them that he would have killed himself. And not even just to Christian's family. When his friends, when anyone who knew him found out about it, it made no sense to them at all. So Christian's family was very suspicious, and they assumed that there was more to the story than they were being told, and their suspicions were strengthened when they went to Christian's apartment. When they went into the apartment, the condition the apartment was in, like, blew their mind. And they were like, there is no way that Christian would have had his home this way. And his brother, who lived with him, looked at the apartment and was like, oh, absolutely. Like, I live here. This is not how we keep it. This is not how Christian would have had it. Apparently the house was trashed. It was like completely wrecked. There were cigarettes put out on random surfaces. There were holes cut into Christian's mattress. It looked like somebody had been partying there and was looking for something. And when his family, this is going to blow your mind, when his family went into the bathroom, the place that he was killed, they found evidence that the police had somehow missed. Because remember, they immediately assumed it was a suicide, so they weren't looking as hard as they should. And when his family went into the bathroom, they found a bloody t-shirt stuffed behind the toilet. How do you miss that? As an investigator, even in a suicide, you don't look around the bathroom even a little bit. Like, how do you miss that? I do not understand. So Christian's family asked for his case file a number of times, but the police always refused to give it to him, until finally, instead of giving it to them, they just released it publicly without even telling them. And Christian's mom has said this was the hardest thing that happened, aside from learning he was dead, because it was intentionally cruel, and it was like him being killed all over again, because apparently they even publicly released the crime scene photos. So they do eventually get the file. They get the crime scene photos, they get the statements from Whitley and Dylan, they get the reports of what police did or didn't do, and as soon as they start looking into it, they find that it is sketchy. The police had believed that Christian's death was a suicide, and the autopsy had confirmed this, but they were not convinced. So they hired a forensic pathologist to just get a second opinion because they just didn't think that the first look was accurate. They didn't know if it was intentional or if this was just a half-assed investigation, but either way, they just wanted to just be certain because this was just not gelling with them. So when their forensic pathologist looked at the scene, their conclusion differed from police in several ways. First, they determined that the scene looked staged. From the position of Christian's body to the condition of the gun with it being decocked, the lividity in Christian's body, the way that he was in rigor, it just all pointed to Christian dying a lot earlier than police had determined and a lot earlier than Whitley and Dylan had stated. Christian's family even went as far as hiring a company that does crime scene reconstructions, and when they looked at the scene and did luminol testing, they found that there was blood spatter at the scene that police hadn't noticed, and it looked as if it had been cleaned up, like white patterns and things like that. And I wonder if maybe that could have been caused by the shirt that was stuffed behind the toilet. Like, were they trying to clean up, realized that it was too much, and then just hid the shirt? I don't know why you would hide it there. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but either way, there was, again, more evidence than police had found. So another thing that was weird is that, okay, clearly Christian had to have been dead longer. Like, the evidence just shows that. In addition to, like, their pathologist finding this, I mean, the blood at the scene had started to thicken. There was lividity in his body, like he was in rigor. There was a lot going on there that shows that he died sooner than they thought. And speaking of the lividity was found on the backside of Christian's body, which essentially means that Christian would have had to have had those parts, the places where lividity was found, would have had to have been like on the ground, like down, right? Facing downward when he was dead, so that the blood could pool, which is what causes lividity, is the blood pooling to certain parts of the body. Then it gets like that bruised purplish bluish color, you know, from the blood pooling from it being sat in that position for a long period of time after death, right? Okay. Thank you for coming to my crime scene class. Anyways, what was weird about this is lividity is found on the back side of Christian's body, correct? I believe like it was found on the back of one of his calves specifically. And remember in the beginning of this case, I told you that he was found face like slumped forward into the bathtub with his bottom half out and his calves pointed up towards the ceiling. That doesn't really make sense if lividity is on his calf. So his body had to have been moved after he was killed. He had to have been dead with his calves on, like facing the floor for a long period of time, a couple hours, before being flipped over. Why would you do that? And now the calves are facing upward, but lividity had already set, so it's already there. Does that make sense? Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth? How could lividity have been set in his calves if they were facing up towards the ceiling? Now, I know that gravity is just a theory, but this doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. It does not add up. Now, for a recap, and correct me if I'm wrong, for lividity to have been in his calves, he would have had to have been dead with his calves towards the ground, shin side up, for a couple of hours. Lividity sets. After lividity sets, his body is repositioned, so he's leaning over the bathtub and his calves are facing upward. If there's another way that this could have happened, and you know more than me, because a lot of people do, most people in the world are going to know more than me. Tell me if there's another way that this could make sense. And if this is the only way that that could have happened, how did this happen? Because Christian couldn't very well move himself because he would have been dead at this point. So the family's private investigator also starts looking into Christian, looking into his final days, looking into what he did in the last day or so before he died, because if he did kill himself, then perhaps this could enlighten them on his mindset, the things that he did, kind of give them any sort of evidence that would suggest that he would want to do this. So they look into Christian's debit card, kind of see where he had been spending money, what he had used it on. And it's while looking into this debit card that they find that Dylan had been trying to pull money out of Christian's bank account, because the family didn't know this at this point. As far as I know, they didn't learn this until the private investigator looked into it. So they see this, and it's like, that's fucking weird. But remember, Dylan says that Christian told him to do this, because I guess they believed that because Christian was going to kill himself, he wanted to pull out all of his money so his friends could have it, since he wasn't going to be using it anyway. First, they found that bloody shirt jammed behind the toilet in the bathroom, like I mentioned before. And when the blood was tested, by the way, it was determined to have been Christian's blood. But the police didn't find this, so the chain of custody was broken, so they couldn't really do much with it. And they also, when searching the bathroom, found gunshot residue on the frame of the bathroom door and outside the bathroom, which didn't line up with the story that Dylan had found Christian dead in the bathroom with the door closed. Because if the door had been closed, how would the gunshot residue get outside of the bathroom, outside of the door frame? So again, this evidence that the family found and the family's investigators found didn't line up with what the police had found. But the police aren't the ones who had found this, so it's just so messy, because like, you can't use evidence that the police don't find, as far as I know. Like, I'm pretty sure chain of custody, like the police have to find it so that they can authenticate where it was found, when it was found, etc, etc, to show that it's real evidence. So since the family's the one that's finding this, it doesn't really line up. It's just, it's messy, right? It's very messy. And if the investigation had been done correctly in the first place, then this evidence would have been found by the right people and could be actually used. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? So since Christian's death, the lead investigator has been changed on the case several times, and each time it ggets into new hands, they look at it and they're just kind of like, hey, you know what? It's a suicide. Hate to break it to you. So sorry for your loss. That's a bummer. That was until 2017. In 2017, a new investigator was put on the case, and this investigator, when looking into it, determined that they believed that it was a homicide and actually did get arrest warrants for both Whitley and Dylan. The two were going to be arrested for murder, but the DA wanted to take the case to a grand jury before activating and acting on these warrants. And in the end, this didn't even end up happening. However, the charges ended up being downgraded to manslaughter with culpable negligence, because they just didn't have enough evidence to charge the two with murder. And they didn't believe that there would be enough evidence to convince a jury and actually get a conviction. So it got confusing, and like, there's a lot that happens after the fact, but I guess this DA ended up recusing himself because he had some sort of connection to the family in the case. A new DA got put on, and then this got taken to a grand jury. And when a grand jury heard all of the evidence, it was decided rather, that Whitley and Dylan would not be brought up on the manslaughter charges. They didn't believe that there was even enough evidence to bring these two to trial. And now the thing with grand juries is that they are kept private. Everything's kept a secret. It's real hush-hush. So we don't even know what they heard that made them believe that there wasn't enough evidence to even bring these two to trial. But for whatever reason, they determined that there wasn't. So the former DA retired or whatever, and that DA recommended another DA to fill the position, and that DA ended up filling that position. And when she spoke to the family, she's like, okay, yeah, this is what I need. If you want me to try to take this to another grand jury, you need to bring me more evidence that there was actually a crime here, because it doesn't look like there was. And they're like, okay, one, not really our job. But two, okay, fine, here's all this evidence. Here's all this evidence from our pathologist, from the crime scene recreations that show that it looks staged, looks like his body was moved, the gun, the trajectory of the bullet's wrong, where the gun was found on his left side doesn't make any sense, the lividity, all of this, it looks like it was a murder, here you go, but nothing was done about it. And I don't know, it got real sticky there, because I guess there was also some weird back and forth between Christian's family and this DA on Facebook, like on a Facebook group, where the DA was saying some stuff to the family that was real shady, considering this is like a public official. It just got like really, really messy and unprofessional. So at this point, Christian's family is kind of left with nothing, you know what I mean? Like, what can they do? They are told to bring more evidence, but if they bring more evidence. They're like, oh, we can't use it though, because how are we supposed to use evidence that you collected, kind of thing. And so they've just been trying to do whatever they can to get as many eyes on Christian's case as possible. I heard that they tried to rent out like billboard space and ads, and like nobody was willing to help them. And I think that's part of why these videos can be useful in these sort of instances, to at least get more eyes on the case to determine if something did happen. Whether you think that something happened or not, the point is that they deserve to know for sure with a real investigation. This family is just having a hell of a time, dude. First, to lose your child at all. Horrible. And then to have to be the ones to clean up the crime scenes, yourself. They had to clean the crime scene where their child killed themselves like that, or died, you know what I mean? Was shot. That is something that is undisputable, is horrible. And then while doing that, to find evidence that the police missed during their investigation, I can't even imagine what that's like. And I guess they can't even like live comfortably in their home anymore because their community is very divided. Like everyone is divided on what they think happened to Christian, so they don't even know who's on their side, who's an ally, who they can trust. They just don't know who is against them. They've been victims of cyberbullying and harassment, and they've had people try to assassinate their character and make them seem crazy for trying to advocate for their son, their brother, their friend who is gone. They just don't know who's against them. I guess they've been victims of cyberbullying, they've been harassed, they have people who are trying to assassinate their character and make them seem crazy for trying to advocate for their son, their brother, their friend, somebody that they lost in such a tragic way. They've been working towards having the Department of Justice getting involved to look into Christian's case, but also to look into the corruption in the police department and just the total failure on the police's part to investigate Christian's case. They're also trying to get Christian's law passed, which would prohibit the distribution and release of autopsy photos without the consent of the next of kin, which I think should be the standard. I think it should be the standard that you can't release autopsy photos. I don't know. I go back and forth on it because I get what the point is. Like, don't release them unless the family says so. But what if, not in this case, but it should be a case-by-case basis maybe, because what if the family, a family member, the next of kin, is suspected in the case? Like if it is a murder, for example, and the next of kin is suspected, I could see why they would want them not to be released in case it makes them look bad. But overall, I do think that this is probably a good rule of thumb, that you shouldn't be just publicly releasing autopsy photos without the family's consent, because that's just making victims of them all over again. Like, can you imagine that trauma? I can't at all. Like, that sounds like hell on earth. So Christian's family did file a wrongful death suit against Whitley and Dylan, stating that, okay, maybe you didn't kill him, maybe you didn't, who knows, but you were there when he shot himself, and instead of getting him help, aid, maybe saving him, who's to know, you instead let him lay there for a prolonged period of time, while you, instead of helping him, went and tried to withdraw money from his bank account and essentially rob him after he was dead. And here's the thing. Whether he was murdered or suicide, I think I can understand why there's the back and forth. It seems pretty clear that they did not get him help and did try to rob him after he died. I feel like that's something that most people can probably agree upon. But despite that, their suit was unsuccessful. Christian's family also filed lawsuits against several people who were involved in Christian's case. One of the people was the new DA, the one who they were having all the drama with on Facebook. Her name's Cassie, by the way. I don't think I mentioned that. And they also filed a suit against the man that they believe is responsible for releasing Christian's autopsy photos and like the police report and all that. Whitley also filed a lawsuit for the defamation of her character, because essentially she's being harassed and her reputation has been completely destroyed due to this case. Because, I mean, even if people aren't coming right out and saying, I believe that Whitley murdered Christian, that is the implication, because it's her and Dylan who were there, and people saying that it wasn't suicide and it was murder. Who else would it have been? It seems clear that that's what people are thinking and that's what people are saying. So she filed her own suit due to that, because essentially her life has been ruined since all of this has happened. So I guess since all of this has happened, Dylan has been in and out of jail on charges unrelated to Christian's death. But there was a rumor that came out that while Dylan was in jail, he admitted to another inmate that he had killed somebody, to rob them to get money for him and his girl, and that they had made it look like a suicide, and that when it happened, they were both tripping on drugs. But again, that is just a rumor because we don't know what happened to Christian. That's kind of the point. We don't know what happened. We know it was determined to be a suicide, but we also know that there's some really shady things in terms of the case, the people involved, the stories, and the investigation. And I can absolutely see why Christian's family thinks this whole thing is fucking weird, and they're not convinced that the determination is accurate because they have no trust in the people who investigated the case because they did such a shitty job. How can I trust the determination you've come to when you didn't even thoroughly investigate the case? I don't know what I think happened to Christian. I know this is a case that people feel very, very passionately about. Like, they stand strong with what they believe happened. I'm not convinced one way or the other, if I'm totally honest. Do I think he could have been murdered? Absolutely. I think that the scene looks super weird. I think that it's clear that it was altered after he died one way or the other, that he was moved, that there was a period of time that happened from him dying to police being called where something happened in that bathroom. And it wasn't left the way that it was initially, like when he died, it was different than when he was found. I think that that's clear. I think his body was moved. I think the scene was altered and that they attempted to clean it up. And I think there was the prolonged time before his friends, the people he trusted, called the police and reported it. Do I think it's possible that he killed himself? Maybe. I didn't know Christian. I don't know what he was going through. And I know that people who were close to him say that there's no way that he had everything going for him. There's no way that he would have done this. But it's not unheard of for people to kill themselves and for the people in their lives have no idea that they were suffering that badly. And if those text messages found on his phone were actually sent by him, maybe that's evidence that there was more going on behind the scenes than people knew about, stuff that he was internalizing and not telling his friends and family about. With that said, in the scenario that he killed himself, to make the evidence make sense, the scenario that I see happening is that Christian did, and this is a scenario where he did kill himself, that he shoots himself, that his friends are there, Whitley, Dylan, they run to the bathroom, they find him there unresponsive. They maybe try to help him, they move him, they pick him up, they try to see if he is okay, and they realize quickly that he is not. And they say, okay, well, how about instead of calling the police, we try to benefit from this because he's already gone, right? He's already gone. There's nothing we can do. Maybe we can capitalize on this suicide. So maybe at this point, Dylan goes and tries to pull out Christian's money. Whitley takes his cigarettes. They try to kind of clean up the scene a little bit. You know, it makes them shitbag people, but not necessarily murderers, just in this particular scenario. Now, I'm not saying this happened again. I don't know what happened. That's the point. If there had been a good investigation, there might be more answers. But it's a scenario that I could see happening based on the investigation we have. Based on the evidence we have from the investigation that was had. There's no direct evidence that he was actually murdered, but I do think there is definitely evidence that he was moved after the fact, like lividity shows that, and that there was a prolonged lull in reporting that he was shot. And I do think that that in itself is a problem. Is that not a crime in itself, like not reporting him and trying to steal his money? Should they not be brought up on charges for that? I don't know. I don't know the law well enough to know, but it seems like that would be something you could be arrested for. Anyways, that, my friends, is the story of the controversial death of Christian Andreacchio. What do you think? I think a lot. I think that what happened to Christian is so horrible. Him dying is so horrible. And a big reason that this case is so controversial and there's so many problems and speculation and rumors surrounding it is because there wasn't a good police investigation done right from the jump. And I feel like we've seen this time and time again in a lot of the cases where there's all of these questions. It all stems from the police not doing a good job. And if they had just done a thorough investigation from the beginning, treat every case like a murder until you know it's not, not until you think it's not, until you know it's not, collect all the evidence, do everything, do your due diligence, because when you don't, then there's all of these questions that have no answers, that can't be answered, and all this giant cloud of suspicion over a case. And if it had just been handled right from the first place, there would probably be answers to these questions, and it wouldn't be such a mystery because they would know, because they figured it out. You know what I mean? And because they didn't, if Dylan and Whitley have nothing to do with it, their lives and reputations have just been completely destroyed for no reason. And innocent people are then being persecuted. And if Christian was murdered, then murderers are walking free. And that's all stemming from a bad police investigation. And that is literally your job. That's what you signed up for. And lives are being ruined because it wasn't done properly. Bottom line is lives are ruined because of it. Christian's gone. That is, already a horrible thing, but now his whole family, their lives are ruined because they have no closure. And if these two are innocent and had nothing to do with it and just happened to find their friend dead and are just shitty people who tried to steal money from him after the fact, their lives are ruined also. That's just gross. It's gross. To me, it's just really unacceptable. But now I ask you, I want to know how you feel, where you land on this. Do you think that Christian Andreacchio was murdered? Or do you think he killed himself and his friends were just kind of like, well, he's already gone. We might as well make some money on this. I'm very curious to see where you land, so please let me know down below your answer to the question of today. But anyways, guys, that completes this video. I hope you found it interesting and informative, and I presented it in a way that made sense because there's just so much information, and I feel like I was a little scatterbrained in this video, but I might be just second guessing myself because I'm so tired, you know what I mean? But let me know down below if I presented it in a way that made sense to you. I hope I did, and of course I just want to thank you for hanging out and remembering Christian with me today. Regardless of what happened to him, his loss was clearly a fucking huge and heavy one on everyone who loved him. It's very clear, you can see it, that losing him just shattered so many people, and that is just absolutely tragic, to say the least. Anyways, please let me know down below of any cases you'd like to see me cover in the future. As this one indicates, if you leave me a suggestion and leave it to me several times, eventually you will wear me down into doing it. I will see it enough times that I'll be like, hey, I need to cover this case, because anytime you leave a suggestion, I add it to my list so I can look into it, because you guys suggest some really good cases, some really interesting ones that bring up some really good conversation, some good back and forths. Hopefully, respectfully, please. I hate people leaving shitty comments about people who aren't here to defend themselves, but please, what am I even talking about? Leave me whatever case suggestions you have down below, because I know you're filled with good ideas and good taste. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. If you haven't already, please don't forget to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing the bell. I put out a new video every week, and I'd love to hang out with you. Yes, you, specifically you. And if you want to hang out more consistently, you can follow me on all my social media. It's all linked down below for you. I have a Facebook page, I have an Instagram, and I have a Twitter. There will also be a link to my merch store because you guys wanted some merch, so I made some merch. And also all the makeup and stuff. Earrings, everything's listed down below as well. No nail polish, because trying to paint your nails while also holding a tiny baby who has to be glued to you 23.5 hours a day is a challenge. Now to finish this, I just want to thank you for being here when you could literally be anywhere else in the world. That is tight. You are tight. Please stay safe and be a better person than you were yesterday, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye.